Here we are. Good morning, PTI's Daily Show. Welcome to the Institute of Clinical Excellence, the PTI's Daily Show, here on Thursday morning with Leadership Thursday. Happy to be your host today. My name is Alan, currently serving as the Chief Operating Officer for the Institute of Clinical Excellence and a faculty member in our Fitness Athlete Division. Here on Thursday morning, it's Thursday, Leadership Thursday. It's also Gut Check Thursday. This week, all body weights. We have a 4-time workout. I saw some folks hitting it already last night. We have 18 air squats, 21 push-ups, 30 sit-ups, 30 air squats, 15 push-ups, 30 sit-ups, and then 42 air squats, 9 push-ups, 30 sit-ups. So air squats go up, push-ups come down, sit-ups stay the same. Saw some folks hitting it around 7 to 8 minutes last night, so really nice workout to try in the clinic with a patient, to try out maybe going up north to the cabin, out to the beach, something like that where you don't have access to the gym. A nice weekend workout for you all. Some courses coming your way. This weekend you can join Zach Morgan down in Baton Rouge for cervical spine management, or if you're also in the Southeast, you can join Jason London for Rehab of the Injured Runner Live. That's going to be in Orlando. Next weekend you can catch Mitch Babcock out in Eastern New York, Wappingers Falls for Fitness Athlete Live. The weekend of August 21st and 22nd, you can catch Justin Dunaway in Nashville for Total Spine Thrust Manipulation. And we have a couple of different courses the last weekend of August before Labor Day hits us. You can join Zach Long out in Minneapolis for Fitness Athlete Live. You can join Mark Gallant up in Cheyenne, Wyoming for Extremity Management. Zach Morgan again down in Georgia for Lumbar Spine Management. That course only has 2 spots left. Or you can join Jeff Moore and myself up in Rochester, New York for cervical spine management. And then a couple online courses coming your way. We have persistent pain management starting August 9th, which is this next week coming up, so still some time to jump into that course with Justin. And then we have modern management of the older adult, essential foundations. That course fires up August 18th, so a couple more weeks to jump into that course. That course is about 75% full. It always sells out, so make sure that you jump into that course if you're interested in working with older adults and hanging out with your older adult crew 8 weeks online. So let's get into today's topic. So we're going to kind of start a series of many on kind of foundations of leadership. And today we're going to talk about the idea of leadership as servitude. So we're going to get into the concept of servant leadership. So this idea comes to us from the 1970s. A gentleman by the name of Robert K. Greenleaf, who was an executive at AT&T and kind of worked in big corporations throughout the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s, and wrote this essay, this book, that kind of started the concept of servant leadership. And this is kind of the basic idea that is unfortunately very drastically different to modern leadership, the idea that a leader exists to serve their employees, and a kind of inversion of the corporate mindset that Robert saw working at AT&T and other big corporations throughout the middle of the 20th century, and coming up with this idea of servant leadership. So I want to get into kind of what is that, what did he outline, and then get into some practical applications of it as well. So this idea that leaders exist to serve their employees, and that a servant leader displays common 10 characteristics. These characteristics are the ability to listen really well, the ability to show empathy, the ability to heal, and this obviously not physically healing, but mental and emotional healing. Basically the ability to come into conflict with folks that you work with, but move past it in a productive manner. Awareness of what's going on in the business, of how your employees are doing, how they're responding to the things that you're asking them to do. A characteristic of persuasion, kind of the idea that there's always going to be this back and forth when you are running a business between yourself and your employees, and that sometimes they need to be persuaded, and that can take a number of different forms. Maybe not physical persuasion, that's a little bit savage, but incentivizing them somehow, otherwise basically convincing them of trying to get the job done of the task that you're setting before them. Conceptualization, foresight, really big on this concept of stewardship, which we'll unpack on itself as we get deeper into this, and then community building and a commitment to the growth of people in the organization. And that's kind of the main characteristic of servant leadership. is that last point, a commitment to growth of people. That when we lead this way, our employees grow, they become more independent, they become more autonomous, they're able to take on more tasks and be more successful when we practice this servant leadership style of management. And so the biggest concept that comes from this is the idea that leaders eat last. Leaders are always the first one in and the last one out. This basic mindset that if you are not absolutely crushing yourself to serve your people, you are not their leader, you are just their boss, right? If you are putting the majority of the work on your employees, if you kind of have a top-down approach to leadership, then you're not truly a leader, at least in the eyes of Robert Greenleaf and the servant leadership mindset. You are just a boss, right? You are just somebody assigning tasks, and you are not truly their leader. And to kind of unpack this and I think and reflect on all the different times in my life when the leaders above me were not servant leaders. And I just want you to pause and reflect on the answers to a couple of these questions if you're out there and you're a management position and ownership position. Ask yourself, have your employees ever had to give up their lunch break to finish their documentation or see a patient that got scheduled last minute? Have your employees ever missed a family event to see a patient, finish documentation, or otherwise complete some tasks for work? Have they ever had to cancel days off or come in on a day off that they had scheduled because they needed to complete a task that you could not otherwise do yourself for them or get covered for them? When was the last time they had a physical exam? When was the last time they had a dental checkup? When was the last time they went and saw a therapist and had their mental health evaluated? Do they often complain of not having time to use the bathroom or eat during the day? If the answer to any of those questions is yes or I don't know, then you should be assured that you are definitely failing your employees as a leader, right? If those basic needs are not being met because the emphasis on your clinic, on your business is about productivity and numbers and seeing patients and getting units billed and converting social media inquiries into initial evaluations, whatever metric you're using to track, if that is your priority, then servant leadership is not your priority and you are failing your employees as a leader. We know that folks need time off. We know that their needs need to come first, whether that's money, whether that's resources, whether that's physically time off of work, vacation time, that sort of thing. And that we always need to focus on putting our employees first and putting earnings, productivity, numbers, whatever last. Always, always, always altruism first, especially in this servant leadership movement. Now, why do we do this? This can seem very different than what we're used to. Many of us work in organizations that are leader first, right? That are not employee oriented. They're leader first. They're focused on make sure you're billing at least 4.2 units per patient. That comes first. Nothing else matters until we hit sort of these benchmarks. Well, when we look at the research, there is an amazing amount of research on this servant leadership movement, some really high quality research. And what does this research show us? The first thing it shows us is that when you lead bottom up, when you have servant leadership in play, then you facilitate incredible employee growth. That your folks grow very fast on both a personal and a professional level. They become very quickly more autonomous and tend to gravitate and naturally become servant leaders themselves and kind of show exponential growth in both the ability for them to perform at whatever their job task is, but also to help others underneath of them take on those tasks and kind of facilitate a multi-generational business. These folks are more independent, more creative, and more engaged. Robert Greenleaf in his essay said the most important question you should have as a leader of can you ask yourself, are those people I'm serving growing as persons? If the answer is yes, then you're doing it right. If the answer is no, then you're not doing it right. And I think a really good example of this that I've had in my life is working with the CEO of ICE, Jeff Moore, who is always asking himself the question, who's coming up behind me? It doesn't matter what I think the business needs to do, what metrics we need to track to know we're being successful. All that stuff is stuff that the leader has to worry about and no one else. What needs to happen is, are the people, the next generation, are they ready to take on the new tasks? Are the people underneath them ready to take on more tasks? The quickest way to grow your business is to not start your own clinic and start charging people $150 an hour cash, There are a million social media mentorship programs and mastermind groups that want to sell you a $10,000 mentorship program that focus solely on trying to get patients in the door and trying to charge them as much money as possible. And yes, that will lead to money in the door, but that will not lead to long-term business growth. What leads to long-term business growth is spending time developing your employees, making sure the people underneath you know how to do their job really well, and probably know how to do their job so well that they could do your job and teach the people behind them as well. That's how we start to facilitate this exponential growth, and not only bringing on more employees, but having high-quality trained employees that's going to let us open up new locations, let us open up new courses, whatever your market is, to exponentially grow that business year over year over year over year. And so you should be treating those people underneath you like they're going to be in charge of the business from the first day that they start. They should know how the back end looks. It shouldn't be this mystery thing that they're not allowed to see or not allowed to know. They should probably start to understand that as soon as possible. What does the back end look like? How does it work? What if you, the owner, were not able to come to work for a day or a week or a month? Would your business fall apart? If so, you're probably not a very successful leader if the folks underneath you don't understand, at least on a working level, of how kind of the nuts and bolts of the operation work. We're very focused on that here at Health HQ. All the therapists know how to schedule a patient, make a chart, put in insurance information, bill insurance, call on something, do an authorization, all that kind of back-end stuff that is hidden from most therapists. All the therapists here know how to do it because they are independent, and in a couple of years, they're going to be the owners of this clinic and not Mitch and I. And that's kind of the idea of facilitating the next generation beneath us. So that's how servant leadership can make the business itself successful. The other great thing is that there's also a ton of research showing about how those folks who work in organizations that practice servant leadership have amazing benefits outside of the workplace. There is so much research from the mental and emotional healthcare space on looking at these folks and how is their well-being outside of work. It's fantastic. It shows the positive benefits on employee physical and mental health, and also their family well-being. If you think about having all of your needs met at work, you're not worried about, am I going to be able to eat lunch today? Am I going to be able to go pee today? When you're not worried about having those base needs met, when all of those basic needs are met, and even more, when your job is very fulfilling, when you go home, you're better able to help your family have their needs met, and it leads to a not only better employee, but a better employee's family as well, which is, again, that helps with attrition, that helps keep folks working when we can help them meet their needs. Happier people aren't on Indeed looking for new jobs as often as unhappy people, right? That's so basic, and it's something we really fail to understand as leaders of why is attrition so high. Attrition is very, very costly. Happier people don't leave as often. They don't think about what's the bare minimum I have to do at work today to fly under the radar, and they're not thinking about calling in sick, right? So that extends, that servant leadership mindset extends beyond the workplace. So when done correctly, organizations that practice servant leadership represent an inverted pyramid, right? The leaders at the bottom, they're ideally consuming the least amount of resources from the organization. They're trying not to take a lot of time from their employees. Maybe they're not even trying to take a lot of money from the workplace, right? I'm a big fan that the people that generate the majority of the revenue should take the majority of the revenue home, which is very, very contrary, especially in our profession, to business as normal, where therapists take home a very small amount of the revenue that they generate. I'm a big fan of it being the other way around, that the person generating the revenue should take home the lion's share of it, and those folks that are not generating the revenue should not take home as much. Every industry, ours included, is leadership first. You'll notice that. You've probably already experienced that with the job or maybe many jobs you've had in your career so far, where the leader works the least, generates the least amount of revenue, but consumes the majority of the resources, right? We can all imagine the CEO of the big corporation that makes $30 million a year and flies around the world on a jet, while the person actually building the product is in the factory making minimum wage, right? We have to work harder to flip that pyramid around and make sure that the leaders at the bottom and the employees are on the top. And just be careful. There's so much stuff on social media right now that's focused on getting people in the door, developing more referrals, more money, more units, more billing, right? And that should not be the focus. The focus should be on making sure that you're hiring quality therapists, you're training them, you're blocking time in your schedule, not only to help them with clinical practice and mentor them as a clinician, but also showing them how the back end works and making sure they understand all the stuff that goes into their work, aside from, at least in our industry, seeing the patient and doing the no, right? There's so much more that happens in physical therapy than that. And if you can help your folks understand that, if you can practice that servant leadership mindset, you'll find that they're more independent. You can leave and come back and the building doesn't burn to the ground, right? You can walk in, guess what? Patients are still coming to the door, they're being seen. Everything is running without your influence if it's done right, which is a very rewarding feeling. There's a lot of work on the front end that goes into that, but it's very, very rewarding, trust me, to be able to walk in and see everybody's working with patients. All the stuff that needs to be getting done is getting done, and you are not having to stand there and micromanaging anybody. So look into the idea of servant leadership. We're going to carry this forward across the next couple Thursdays as well. But I just want to leave you really quickly with some quotes from Robert Greenleaf from his essay that I really embody, and I really enjoy these quotes. I serve because I'm a leader, and I'm a leader because I serve, right? Kind of a yin and yang, a snake chasing its tail there. So I'll leave you with that. Happy to hear any comments you all have of ways that you try to practice servant leadership, or ways that you've seen servant leadership integrated well, maybe with your current job or a previous job, and start some discussion on this servant leadership topic. So we'll be back the next couple Thursdays, and we'll drill down a little bit deeper on that, but that's an introduction to servant leadership. Leadership is servitude. So I hope you have a fantastic Thursday. Have fun with Gut Check. I'll be back tomorrow, Fitness Athlete Friday. We're going to talk about a recent article about the detrimental effects of CrossFit on the body that was published earlier this week that I'm excited to talk about and rant about a little bit tomorrow morning. If you're going to be at a course this weekend with Zach or with Jason, have a fantastic time. If you're going to be in New York in a couple weeks, I'll see you there. So have a great Thursday. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.